Hello and welcome to another tutorial from CamiPaige Boutique. I'm Brooke Tannehill and today I'm going to be showing you this amazing cup that was created using the beautiful glitters from the August Purple Haze mystery box from A Little Extra Ink Epoxy. As always, all the materials I use will be listed below in the description, and there might even be an awesome little coupon code to save you some coin. So without further hesitation, let's go ahead and get started. For this design, I am using the 32-ounce HYDROFIT from a Steel Magnolia, and I liked this cup because it gives me the option of the water bottle or switching over to the traditional plastic lid with the straw. I can do whatever I want, and that's what's one of the amazing features about Steel Magnolia. So I prepped this cup, took it outside, spray painted it a two-tone ombre effect for the purple, and now we're going to apply our glitter using the epoxy method. The way I do the epoxy method is that I usually mix up at least 10 mLs of a little extra ink epoxy, just so that I can make sure that the epoxy is mixed thoroughly and that I'm not going to have any kind of sticky cup afterwards. So even though I'm not going to be using near the amount of the 10 mLs, I still always mix up at least that much so that we know that the epoxy is in a really good state. It is going to help to apply those beautiful glitters. For this ombre, we are actually going to be using 6 glitters. Yes, 6 of them. You can see all of their beautiful containers over there on the side of the screen. But because we are going to be using 6, I did apply a little more epoxy than I typically do. And that's because we're using a lot of chunky glitters and then coming over and doing some nice blends of the finer cuts that you'll see here on the screen. So I applied a little more epoxy than I typically do, let it sit for about 2 minutes so it's nice and even, and now we're gonna go in and apply the glitters. So all the glitters that you're seeing here are actually in the Purple Haze mystery box from A Little Extra Ink Epoxy, and I cannot wait to show you this beautiful blend that we're able to get with these colors. To start off, we're gonna do the 2 chunky glitters, and the way that I broke up the cup is that I'm going to divide the cup in half with the 2 chunky glitters. So this, I could not get over this color. This is called Free Spirit. And I'm going to apply that to the bottom half of the cup. So focusing only on the darker spray painted colors, obviously, and then tilting the cup up to get the Free Spirit to flow down and start the fade that we're going to be using with the lighter purple. This Free Spirit glitter is absolutely beautiful because it's a chunky mix, so you're going to have different cuts that really help to give you great coverage over that darker purple color. I thought it was absolutely beautiful, and it had some wonderful color shift that really adds some depth to the cup. I then came in with Bella. So Bella here, it's got more of a light purple, almost pink base color to it. But over the light purple spray paint, it definitely pulls more of the purple tones of the glitter. Just like Free Spirit, it's a multi-dimensional cut that I thought was amazing. Now, this is where we come in with the other 4 finer cuts of glitter. So we're gonna start on the bottom and go darker to lighter. So this is Jewels, again from Glitter Heart Company. And one thing I forgot to mention is all of these glitters are done in partnership with Glitter Heart Company. So they're absolutely beautiful. And since they are my glitter dealer of choice, I could not have been happier. With Jewels, you're gonna start at the bottom, as you can see, and then I just lightly tilted the cup up just to give me probably about a 2-inch almost stripe at the bottom. And then also I came in and filled in the bottom, as you can see here, to make sure that I got that dark, rich tone of the purple to start out with the full 4-color ombre. You want to take your time with this, and since we're using the epoxy method, you do have a good 20-30 minutes to make sure that you have the fades and the blends the way that you want them. After that, I came in with another amazing, I guess I should say, purple color called Purple Dream. And this is more of a holographic purple, and it was the second darkest of the 4 other glitter colors, and I thought it blended so nicely with the jewel at the bottom. So I came in typically starting about maybe a 1/2 inch over the jewel to start the blend between the 2 colors, and I think it faded it really nicely by doing that. Then I came in with Enchanted. And Enchanted, again, is another holographic purple, just a little bit lighter tone. And I started about another 1/2 inch over the Purple Dream that we saw before and created about a 2-inch stripe around the cup and just had it fade nicely into the deeper cuts below. Now, the next color I'm going to be using is an exclusive glitter that is only to this Purple Haze box, and it was mixed specifically for ALE. And it's called Purple Haze, which is the namesake of the entire mystery box. And oh my gosh, is it beautiful. It's got so much dimension to it. It's got fine cuts. It's got some more medium cuts. So it's not a true chunky mix, but the color was absolutely perfect. And since it was the lightest color, I was so happy to put it up at the top so that you guys could see it in full effect on this cup design. Of course, this would not be one of my tutorials if I didn't talk about how I completely oversealed my glitter. But after I was happy with the ombre, I let that dry for about 3 or 4 hours. Then I moved into 2 or 3 pretty generous coats of clear, I think it was semi-gloss spray paint from Rustoleum. Let that dry for a good probably 2 hours. Then it was time for epoxy. So for this cup, and since it's a 32 ounce, you are going to need quite a bit of epoxy for this first layer to get a lot, like not a lot of coverage, but get the coverage that you need to lay down a good base for the other layers of epoxy. So I mixed up 40 mLs of a little extra ink epoxy and made sure to take my time applying the epoxy over the different areas so we wouldn't have any possibility of contamination. Granted, we had already sealed this so well that that wasn't really likely, but I still like to take precautions and try and keep the glitter where it's supposed to be. I let the cup turn for about 10 minutes and I grabbed my torch to make sure that I popped any micro bubbles that might have appeared since we are using a chunky glitter. Notice that I keep my torch moving and I never keep it in one spot so the epoxy doesn't break. I did another 2 coats of epoxy to get a smooth surface over the glitter, and now I'm going to show you how I sand a cup to get that perfect surface for spray paint. Here, I'm going to be using an orbital sander, and that's what that green thing is next to me. And I like to use the orbital sander because you get that surface, but I also, what I was showing you right there, use the front 2 inches of the orbital sander and I put it down onto the cup. So you can see I have a baby blanket and I have the cup, and I just hold the orbital sander in place, putting only those front 2 inches of the disc on the cup and just slide the cup back and forth. I know I said slide, but it's more of a roll, to be honest, but like you just gently roll the cup back and forth, keeping the orbital sander in place. What this does, it allows you to see the high and low spots in the epoxy and helps you to get that smooth surface without focusing on one spot that has the potential to create more divots. So all I do here, as you can see, is just use the front part of the orbital sander, roll the cup back and forth, and you'll start to see when you get that smooth surface. So right there, you can see those low spots because they're still shiny, and that's how you know that you need to go a little bit longer with the orbital sander to get that perfectly smooth surface that sets us up for success with the spray paint. Now, it's okay to have like some minor divots here and there. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, but as long as you're working to get a really good and primed surface for the spray paint step, you're going to see such a difference in the overall quality of your cup. Now, don't be afraid that your whole cup is scuffed up. I promise, I've done this a bunch. When you apply epoxy over the glitter, it will come right back to that beautiful shine and you have nothing to worry about. The next thing I wanted to show you is how I get that nice rounded surface with a chunky glitter, because I know it's something that I've struggled with and it can be somewhat of a nuisance because chunky glitter is so beautiful, but on those edges, it just doesn't like to cooperate. So what I like to do, and you can see me doing it right here, is I hold this orbital sander upright and then I simply use the cup to just go back and forth and rock the edge against the orbital sander to get that perfectly smooth surface. What this does is it allows the epoxy to really do its thing, hold the glitter in place, but then also get that smooth finish. And I hope I'm explaining that correctly. But just by rocking it back and forth, it gets all of the jagged edges of the glitter down and just lets the cup kind of shape shine through. Man, I'm having trouble with this. And it just really creates a nice finished look. The next thing I wanted to show you is how nicely an orbital sander does do on the bottom of cups, but I will tell you that it's something that you need to be careful of just because you can sand through that glitter so quickly. But what I like to do is, because the orbital sander is so rigid and it gives you that nice flat surface, that I just set it down on the top of the cup, it will even out everything and just make for a really nice flat surface of the cup and for the next layers of epoxy and or spray paint. One thing I forgot to mention is the disc I'm using on this on my orbital sander is a 220 grit. So it's a super fine grit, means it's not going to take a lot of the bulk off the epoxy. It's more of just lightly scraping the surface and giving you more control of where and how the bumps or the rough spots come off. So I highly recommend it. After I was happy with the surface of the cup, I took it into the bathroom and I washed it with some Dawn dish soap, let it dry, and now I'm coming into the step of measuring the cup. This is super important because this determines the size and the spacing for how we do the stripes. So this is the SVG that I created specifically for this design, so you can find it linked below. It's in my Etsy shop. And what I did first is I created a square based upon the measurements that I just took on the cup. I then moved it behind the mermaid tail stripes, and I set the stripes up to where I would be happy with them in the design. What I didn't like was that the stripes lined up a little bit wonky with the size of the cup. So you can absolutely make this however you feel fit. But I end up removing one of the stripes out of the SVG. So you can see I removed one out. And then I was able to select the spacing tool in Cricut Design Space and evenly space the stripes to where they looked beautiful. They were going to line up on the cup. Then I sliced it with the square, deleted the extra out, deleted the extra square in the background behind it, and it was ready to cut for the cup. I cut out this design on a piece of Oracle 631, and you can see it there, weeded it, and now it was time to apply it so that we could do our spray paint design. One of the tricks that I typically do when I am doing any kind of vinyl work around the whole cup is I do put a piece of painter's tape down the entire length of the cup, making sure that I have at least one straight side of it, and I will use that as the guide to apply my vinyl. So use the straight painter's tape, then I cut off I would say probably about an 1 to 2 inch piece of the backing behind the vinyl, and then I apply the vinyl with transfer tape to that line of painter's tape to get it as straight as possible, and then use the pressure of my thumbs to roll the vinyl out from the middle to the ends. So pushing in the middle, then just using the pressure from my thumbs and my fingertips to push it out. Now, I was on the struggle bus with these stripes just because I just could not get them to come out at first the right way, but then I'm like, you know what, we're gonna persevere and push through it. So that's what I did. So just pushing down in the middle of the cup, it will force the backing of the vinyl to come off, and it will just apply the stripes as you go around the cup and as the cup turns. So that's all I'm doing here. I'm sure, and I'm not sure. I know there are people that are better at applying the vinyl to cups, but I thought I did a pretty good job here. And then when you get to the spot where the blue painter's tape is underneath the vinyl, just pull up the blue painter's tape, or you could leave it on. I prefer to pull it up now. Then I remove a little section of the transfer tape and lay the vinyl from the other side on top. Then what I'll do is I'll push the, I guess you would say the vinyl from the back on top of the stripes that had already been laid down. And I just use my X-Acto knife to run a straight line down that and then remove any excess from the stripes. You'll see here that I'm not struggling. I'm just making sure that I get things lined up the way I want to, and then I'm pulling back the transfer tape in a methodical way to where it sets it up for success. So I just want to show you that it's not all easy peasy, that I do take my time, and that I by no means do anything perfectly. So just again here, I'm pushing the tape down, the vinyl down, making sure that I have it laid out the way I want to, and then removing the transfer tape. One thing I highly recommend is after you remove the transfer tape, Take your time, look over the cup, and push down the edges so that you make sure that nothing's coming up and no spray paint is going to get underneath there. Then when I was happy with the vinyl work, I took it outside and spray painted it with just one coat of white. And while that was drying, I wanted to show you how I did the decal. So here I just cut this SVG out. Granted, you will see here that I did spell afraid wrong, and I apologize, I corrected it. But this SVG is linked down below in the description. And I just kind of wanted to give you an overview of how I layer my vinyl to apply to my cups. What I'm doing here is I am putting painter's tape over where I will have the back covered in vinyl to cover the overlapping piece. What this does is it allows me to use my hands and feel where the direct opposite side of the cup is. Then once I have that kind of eyeballed and lined out, I apply my decal from the middle out, then really take my time pushing it down, and then I'm carefully removing the transfer tape so that none of the little details of the decal come off. I used 2 holographic vinyls on this cup, and I wish you could see how beautiful it is in person, but I just love the way it came out, even with my horrible spelling error that you can see in full force right there. The next thing I wanted to show you is how I use my squeegee as actually a holder to apply vinyl, especially when I have a decal on the opposite side. But I make sure it's lined up, and then I cut the purple vinyl for my stripe at 1/4 of an inch, so 0.25. Laid that down first, and granted, this is my the purple holographic vinyl. And I'm trying to cover the seam between where my 2 vinyls lined up. Now, better vinyl appliers than me would have had that lined up perfectly, but I had a little bit of offness, I guess I can create the word, and I wanted to cover it with vinyl. I then came in with the Opal holographic vinyl, and I cut this at 0.125 inches wide, and both of these stripes were 11 inches long. And then I took my X-Acto knife and just simply cut a line at the bottom and the top of the cup to make sure that I had a nice, crisp edge for each of these to end. And I'm sorry I'm out of frame here while I'm cutting the top of the vinyl, but you just literally take your X-Acto knife, press hard, and then remove the vinyl from underneath it. One thing you'll notice when I have a close-up shot, and I forgot to mention it earlier, that before I applied my decals, I did do 1 layer of epoxy to cover the spray paint, just so we wouldn't have any lifting that would potentially cause issues down the road. So as always, if you've watched any of my previous tutorials, I like to seal my vinyl, especially if it's holographic, with Quick Coat from CC DIY. I can definitely link that down in the description, but this is just an extra step that makes it so much easier, and it keeps your vinyl from lifting. Especially when you have metallics or holographics, it just has a lot better outcome, and it's a simple step. I mixed up 35 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy to apply as the first of the 2 final layers to this cup, but I didn't end up using the full 35. I used closer to 35 milliliters. So I just took my time applying the epoxy, making sure to get really good coverage over the decals and all of the vinyl work, and also ensure that nothing lifts during this process, because I feel like there's nothing worse. But just making sure, pay attention to the little details, getting the epoxy where it needs to. And then after I was done applying, I came in with the torch to make sure that I didn't have any of those nasty micro bubbles that like to appear over the top of holographic vinyl. And I swear they shine like a huge beacon in the sky when you do a decal. I think there's nothing worse than micro bubbles over holographic, because it's just, they're so visible. Especially when you're using a little extra ink epoxy, because they shine through even more. But use the torch, and then this baby was done. I just had to apply that second layer. Didn't really need any sanding between these 2 layers because we had such a nice smooth surface. And I cannot get over how this cup turned out. I think the purple haze glitters are absolutely beautiful. And when you combine them with this kind of unique design, they just so come to life. And there she is. I am absolutely obsessed with how this cup came out. All of the beautiful purple glitters that were in the purple haze mystery box are absolutely dynamite, and I cannot wait to see what you guys make with all of the goodies that are in store. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure to hit the thumbs up and like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future tutorials. Again, I'm Brooke, and thank you so much for watching. Love you guys. Bye.